Hello and welcome to a new video. Today we're going to take a look here at the Retro Cup and the top teams for this one. If you don't know what the Retro Cup is, the Retro Cup only allows to use Pokemon with the typing that was already allowed or was there in the first generation of the game. So nothing that is as Dark, Steel or Fairy type Pokemon, because Dark and Steel got added during Generation 2 and Fairy during Generation 6. Some Pokemon from Generation 1, for example, now have a typing that is one of those. For example, Magnemite got the Steel type, or also the Clefable got the Fairy typing, which was a normal type prior. But yeah, so those Pokemon are not allowed, no Steel, Fairy or Dark type Pokemon, which is going to make it a little bit interesting. Let's take a look at the meta here real quick. There are some buffed Pokemon, there are some interesting Pokemon. Last time we had this cup around was a year ago, I think, and we didn't have any Pidgeot Noctowl available really because Wing Attack wasn't buffed yet. So the meta is definitely a little bit different. Jellicent here with Surf also got a little bit higher as well from the last season's update, not from this one. But from the buffed Pokemon itself, you're going to see here, for example, Golbat as well as Dewgong and Walrein, they're all going to be fairly decent. Trevenant, even though it got nerfed, is still fairly decent as well. Miltank is actually really good, to be fair. Emolga is a cool Pokemon, as well as Quagsire, Golisopod, but nothing too crazy here. There's nothing that completely dominates it right now. Seems a little balanced, of course. Lickitung on top there seems a little bit broken or whatever, but if you look at the Pokemon that are below it, for example, the Pidgeot or the Noctowl, just completely award that Pokemon. So even Lickitung is not the strongest Pokemon, but definitely a decent one, as you're going to see not in this team, but in most likely several teams afterwards. Here we're going to have a line that is kind of similar to what we already had prior in the Open Great League, but also something that you can run similar in the Ultra League right now. For example, I run sometimes the Trevenant, Walrein plus Aurorus in the Ultra League, that's why I made it Ultra League to Retro. But here, for example, we have the Medicham. Medicham might be a little bit better against other Aurorus, that's why I put it in here first. Otherwise, you can also use any kind of grass type like Lurantis, like the Trevenant, like the Tropius here in the lead as well, which would really be nice for the other Pokemon in the back. You're going to have the Sasop here of either Dewgong, Walrein, or the Regirock in my opinion, and then the Aurorus or any of the other Pokemon as well there in the back, which should work out pretty well. This is most likely a very common line that you're going to see quite often. Medicham is actually not as good here as in the Open Great League, but still I think it's going to be a very strong Pokemon that you're going to see quite often. Team can struggle maybe against Frosted, but also with the coverage of Aurorus as well as Walreins, or also even the Dewgong, I think it should be pretty fair for you as well. So fairly decent team. Let's take a look at the second team here. We have a no-chill team because we have a chilling Pokemon in the lead here with the Frostless. Frostless is one of the strongest Pokemon. Definitely look out for this Pokemon. You have to counter this. You have to have it yourself as well. One of the strongest Pokemons of this team here, or in general of this meta here as well. Same goes for Dapple, by the way. Dapple is a very strong Pokemon as well. But here we're using Cordelia as Sasop. You see already some holds for the team, but they're not really holds, to be fair. Something like Aurora is still going to get hit hard by both Cordelia's coverage for grass as well as Lickitung's coverage for grass, so it's not as bad. Lickitung itself actually has a little bit of an awkward matchup against Frostless a lot of times, so you definitely have to be a little bit careful there as a Lickitung, as the Avalanche does a ton of damage as well against you. And also Lickitung itself as a neutral matchup, and Cordelia is also not really that great for the Lickitung itself. And Dapple here can be a little bit problematic for sure, but you can also use your own Dapple as a Sasop or the Lantern in the back, and you kind of have better coverage for that. And then let's take a look at the third team. We have the Baneful Bunker, which is of course the signature move of the first Pokemon here, the Toxapex. This Pokemon is going to be insanely bulky, and you don't have to risk anything against Steel-type Pokemon anymore, which you were really weak against before. So that's kind of nice. Of course, you also missed now the Fairy types, which you completely were walling, but still, Poison types are going to have a great time here without the Steel types around, allowing it to be fairly bulky. And even against Frosted, well, it looks like a loss here in the 0-1 scenario there. It's going to be still a very okayish matchup for you, because you're still going to do a ton of damage with Poison Jab plus Brine, which is kind of wild, and you can still take a Shadow Ball with ease. So fairly good Pokemon here to use. This Pokemon really has some potential. Frosted Sasop again, or the Dapple, both of them are insanely good Sasops in this meta right now. As you're going to have the Abomasnow in the back to counter those Lantern, which is definitely an issue for you otherwise. I actually would most likely go here for the Dapple, Sasop, and the Abomasnow in the back. But you can use whatever here is really on the screen, all of them should work out pretty well for this lead. Team number 4, we're going to have the Lantern in the lead here, or the Regirock. Lantern is most likely a little bit preferred here, as you're going to see right now. Pelipper as a Say Swap or the Golbit as well. Both of them going to be fine. Altaria can be tricky, but they're all kind of neutral to be fair against it. You can also use the Mantine if you want, which has X to Ice Beam. Otherwise, Lantern itself can be a little bit tricky. That's why maybe Lantern itself as a lead and like a Say Swap, or for example, the Golbit might be fairly decent because you can at least go for Poison Fang there. But double flying, this definitely should work out pretty well. Of course, covering basically the weakness of the Lantern or the Regirock in the lead there with the grass typing weakness definitely should be kind of fine to use. As we can move on onto the 5th team here, Bulky and Busted. Honestly, it's most likely the strongest team and the most annoying team that you can run with the either the Frostus or the what's called the Cresselia in the lead here. Cresselia in the lead can make you a little bit weak against other Frosters, though you have to be a little bit careful about that one. But Cresselia itself is fairly strong if you can avoid the Frosters, because this Pokemon has a lot of play with the coverage it has. But here, for example, we have Dubbo as a Say Swap and the Noctowl in the back, and it looks fairly decent on the paper here. As you see already, the Cresselia has so many really good matchups for itself, just thanks to the coverage. If you look at around here, for example, Auroras gets hit by Grass Knot, Altaria gets hit by Moonblast, Jellicent, Grass Knot. Mantine is just fairly neutral in general. Regirock doesn't like the Grass Knot, Lantern doesn't like the Grass Knot. Grass Knot coverage on general grass coverage is really cool for this meta. There's going to be a different cool Pokemon that you can actually use as an alternative for Cresselia as well later on, which I'm going to show. But here we're going to now have the double Dragon line, which also can work out fairly well. Dragonair especially going to be very good. Like, you have to be a little bit careful because they're going to be quite some Ice-type Pokemon around, but you have a lead here with especially actually the Regirock in my opinion, that's going to help you out quite a bit with that. But also the Auroras has some play here for sure. As you're going to see, the Say-So of the Dragonair having access to the Awkward Tail going to be very nice against Auroras as well, especially if you're up energy. But you can just basically play out matchups in 2 shields and usually realign, which is really cool. And then you can decide if you want to have some more damage output here with the Dragonite, or if you go the safer route with the Altaria in the back. Let's take a look at the next team here. We're going to have the Golisopog team, which also going to include Miltank, which is a very underrated Pokemon, I would say here. This Pokemon most likely not going to be on everybody's list, but it's going to be able to beat Lickitung fairly easy. Going to have still a pretty okayish time against something like Auroras if you run Thunderbolt on it. You're still going to have a pretty decent time against Frosters as well. And yeah, in general, the entire meta kinda does not really hardwall that. It's kinda interesting because last time we had this cup available, a lot of fighting types were around. But I don't really see fighting types too much here for this meta because you see already Frosters, Altaria, Jellicent, Mantine, Golbit, Corvikrigas, Cresselia, Toxapex. There are so many answers to fighting types, so something like the Miltank can actually really shine in this meta, which I'm going to be kind of excited for, so definitely going to be an interesting one here. Now we're going to go for an OG team for the Retro Cup. I looked a little bit through the older videos of mine as well for this cup, and Machamp plus the core of Cresselia were really nice. Now you're going to have a little bit of the issue of having those flying types around, but your cast form can actually function pretty well as kinda a Cresselia, which is kind of funny because Grass Knot is also it has Energy Ball on this Pokemon here, as you can see, which is going to give it coverage for the grass typing, which is really nice, as well as you're going to have Weather Ball Rock, which is going to be able to hit those flying type Pokemon. So the normal cast form is really underrated. I feel like this Pokemon is most likely something that not a lot of people are going to consider, but it's fairly bulky. It's pretty bulky, to be fair. It has great coverage for this meta right now, as you can see here, very decent. Girafarig is also something that I think a lot of people don't really look at, but I feel like it has a lot of potential with the move Double Kick, Psychic Fangs, and the Thunderbolt, giving it coverage for flying type Pokemon again. And then Machamp has actually also a lot of potential for this meta, as you're going to be able to always beat also the Frosters, which is really cool to see. But yeah, we can go ahead and go for the second to last team for the day, which is going to be around Quagsire. I kind of want to build a team around this. You kind of want to have a flying type in the lead for that Pokemon here as well. The Say Swap of the Quagsire are going to be fairly decent, way better than Swampert in this meta, by the way, because of all the flying types around. Stone Edge going to really help you out here, as you're going to see on the screen as well. Going to allow you to beat something like the Frosters way easier, have more coverage against Altaria itself as well, and just going to be more flexible in general. This team, though, can struggle a little bit against the Cresselia, but Cresselia cannot just sweep an entire team on its own, so you can definitely do some team effort against it, but it can be a little bit tricky. I have to say that for sure here. Abomasnow can also be a little bit tricky if you run Lantern in the back. If you go for the Rock version, which you can also run here with the Graveler or Golem and Say Swap and the Regirock in the back, you're not going to struggle as much against the Abomasnow for sure, and also against the Altaria you're going to have a little bit better coverage, but really depends on what you want to do. You can bait out Grass-type Pokemon with a Quagsire and then sweep endgame with a Lantern, but you can also go on a different route here with this team, which definitely should work out. And we can take a look now at the final team for today's video, which is going to be a Lick Them All, one of the most strongest team that you can also run for this meta. Machamp, Say Swap, Charizard in the back, going to allow you to get you some definitely nice coverage. And I feel like Charizard going to be more and more common later on for this meta. I don't think a lot of people are going to consider it early on because of a lot of like rock types like Regirock or whatever. But I feel like this Pokemon can handle late game strats a little bit better because you're going to almost likely see more fighting types coming up because people are going to get sick of Auroras and Lickitung. And so I feel like this team might work out a little bit better in like 3 days after the cup drops. But in general, Charizard is very decent. If you don't want to run Charizard, the normal Stunfisk is also fairly decent. In this meta, being able to counter also those flying type Pokemon is really good. And that's going to do it for today's video. If you enjoyed this video, it's always a lot of effort. Please leave a like on the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.